The legendary Tower of Babel, and what does it mean? We know that this is in the area of Mesopotamia, ancient Samaria, one of the many fantastic stories of the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, the Tower of Babel, a tall construction made in Babylonia after the Great Flood, the Deluge. The gist of the story is all human beings used to speak the same language, and as they came to settle in Mesopotamia, they decided to build a city with a tower to reach the heavens. And through this endeavor, mankind intended to create a name for himself. God, however, had other plans. Mankind's language was confused, and they were scattered over the earth, and as a result, the city and the tower were never completed. Regardless of whether you believe the story actually took place, there are several interesting ways of looking at this. A literal approach to the Tower of the Babel story. One way of approaching this story is a literal approach. If one accepts that the Tower of Babel was a historical fact, then it would be expected that some sort of remains or ruins of this tower would exist. This, however, has not been identified by archaeology, not yet anyway, and the closest candidate for the Tower of Babel may perhaps be the Etemenanke of Babylon. It was a ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, the patron god of Babylon. It has been claimed that this structure was inspired for the Tower of Babel. Given that ziggurats were found in Mesopotamia, the setting of the story, and that they were monumental structures, it's not too difficult to see how they may have been used in the story of the Tower of Babel. So, did this Tower of Babel exist? In 2017, Andrew George, a professor of Babylonia at the University of London, reported that he believes he found solid evidence for the Tower of Babel in an ancient baked tablet from the city of Babylon. The baked clay tablet shows that the ziggurat, what it looked like, with its 7 steps. It shows the king with his conical hat and staff, and below is text that describes the commissioning of the tower's construction. Dr. George said, quote, "This is a very strong piece of evidence that the Tower of Babel story was inspired by this real building. At the top, there is a relief depicting a step tower and a figure of a human being carrying a staff with a conical hat on it. Below that relief is a text which has been chiseled into the monument, and the label is easily read. It reads, Etemenanke Ziggurat Babel. And that means the ziggurat or temple tower of the city of Babylon. The building and its builder on the same relief." End quote. The people enlisted to construct the tower are translated by Dr. George as, quote, "from the upper sea, that is the Mediterranean, to the lower sea, that is the Persian Gulf, and far-flung lands and teeming peoples of the habitations," end quote. Experts had already thought King Nebuchadnezzar II actually did build a ziggurat in Babylonia after he established the city as his capital. The tablet provides more evidence. Archaeologists also think the Tower of Babel was 300 feet along the sides and 300 feet tall. Only a fraction of the building remains, scattered and broken. So what does that mean the Tower of Babel symbolizes? What does it mean? Regardless of the question of the tower's existence, another way to examine the Tower of Babel story is through the symbolic approach. The context of the story, hence the story of the Tower of Babel, being recorded in the book of Genesis. It would make it reasonable to expect a religious message behind this. It has been suggested that the Tower of Babel is a symbol for humanity's vanity. For instance, the use of brick and mortar represent pride in man-made materials. Thus, the use of these materials over stone and tar, which are natural and more durable materials, may be read as mankind's misplaced confidence in his own abilities. Thus, the Tower of Babel may be seen as a monument to mankind's ability and achievement. Man is promptly reminded of his frailty when God decides to confuse their languages and scatter them. While some regard this story as a warning against the sin of pride, others would prefer to question the kind of God that is being portrayed in the story. Regardless, the story seems to convey a notion of doom and gloom for humanity. Now, can the Tower of Babel explain worldwide diversity? Another way of viewing the story may shine a more positive light on the Tower of Babel. Instead of being a lesson against pride, this may be a tool to explain the diversity of peoples in the world. After all, the chapter preceding the story of the Tower of Babel deals with the various nations and descended from the sons of Noah. This theological approach, in which myths are used to explain human conditions, is visible in many other cultures. For instance, in the mythology of the Blackfoot Indians, Old Man, the creator, gave different colored water to people to drink. As a result, different people began to speak different languages. Without the knowledge that we possess today, these myths would have served to throw light on the great mysteries of life. Besides, they make pretty good campfire stories. Although language was confused and mankind scattered across the world, I can't help but think we've come full circle, almost at least. Take this article as an example. It will probably be read by people from different parts of the world. In that sense, we're connected rather than scattered. Also, through translations, we're able to overcome language barriers. And moreover, at times, we may even communicate through empathy without the need for speech. Yet there's one part of the story we have not achieved, and the people in the story of the Tower of Babel were working together to build a monument. Sadly, human beings aren't quite doing the same today. Wars and exploitation of the poor, human trafficking, just some examples of ways in which we're destroying our fellow man, woman, instead of cooperating with him or her. Perhaps it's time we finish building the Tower of Babel. The article, Legendary Tower of Babel, What Does It Mean? Originally created for Ancient Origins, published here under Creative Commons on Collective Spark by Steve McCalmy. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.